Hello students, welcome back into the another session on object-oriented programming. Dear students, since last couple of lectures, we have been discussing about different aspects of object-oriented programming. We discussed how object-oriented programming is better than the procedure-oriented programming. Today, we are on the verge to start with the second unit of this subject. But before we will get started with the second unit, let's have a quick recapitulation that what we have studied from the unit 1 of this subject. So let's get started. From the unit 1, we initially discussed about the procedure oriented programming versus object oriented programming. So here we drew the difference between C and C++. How object oriented programming is better than the procedure oriented programming that we have seen from that particular subtopic. Then on the second part, we discussed about the basic concepts of object-oriented programming. Here we discussed about the objects, then we have discussed about the classes, and then we have seen different features of the object-oriented programming. Then we have seen the applications of object-oriented programming. We have also seen the object-oriented languages, which are nothing but the C++, Java, Python. These are nothing but a set of object-oriented languages. Then we have drew the differences between C versus C++. Then we have seen the structure of C++ program, how the code is divided into the different parts that we have seen under that particular section. And then we had seen a simple code in the C++ wherein we displayed hello world onto the screen. Afterwards, we discussed about the tokens, keywords and variables, constants, basic data types, user-defined data types, typecasting, operators and expressions. Afterwards, we studied the control structures, that is decision-making statements and loops. The part of it we have studied, that is arrays. We have studied strings and the structures in C++ that we are going to cover in the upcoming chapter. Then the scope resolution operator and the memory management operator that we are going to see in the context of C++ in the upcoming chapters. So far we have covered unit 1, and now today we are going to start with the unit 2 of this particular subject. So let's get started. Now in the second chapter we are going to discuss about classes and objects. Now as you all know, objects are nothing but any real world entity which is relevant for your code. So we have some physical objects which are available in our real world. So like we have a pen, we can have a board, laptop, bench, projector, bike. All these are nothing but the objects. So when we talk about the real world entity, it is nothing but the object for us. Now when we will develop the code, whichever the objects are relevant for us, that only we will consider. So similarly, as we have the physical objects, we can have some logical objects also. So for example, we are going to create a result of student. So that result can be treated as an object, or we can have the bank account as another object. So by now you have a clear-cut idea in your mind that what objects are. Now when we will develop the code, whichever the relevant attributes are there that we have to consider for developing an object. Now we will see how to identify attributes and the methods of an object. Now attributes is nothing but the information which will be associated with an object. So whenever we will have the object, there are certain informations which is uniquely associated with that object. So we have to identify that, and that is nothing but the attribute of that object. Again, that object has to play certain role. It has to perform certain responsibility. So that is nothing but the functions or the methods of an object. So let's consider I have an object of a person. Now as we have this as an object, now we know what information which will be associated with this object. So as person would have a name, then person would have an age and weight. So these are the informations which will be associated with that particular person object. Now this information will change depending upon the different persons, isn't it? The name will be unique for every person, the age will be different for every person, and weight will be also unique for every person. So that is nothing but the attributes or information which will be associated with that object. Now, as we have this information, now this object is supposed to perform certain activity in the real world. So what that activity will be? So that person is supposed to eat, sleep, walk, do some work. So that is nothing but the methods which will be associated with that object. Now you can think about the encapsulation characteristics of the object-oriented programming over here. Now over here, these methods, eat, sleep, walk, can access only this information, which is name, age and weight. They cannot access any other information. So this entire thing has been encapsulated over here under one particular box, and that is nothing but one single object. So these methods, eat, sleep and walk, can only work with this information. They cannot work on any other else information. So that is where the encapsulation comes over here. Let's consider another object like a car. Now what sorts of information that can be associated with this object car? So we can have a company of that car, we can have a different color. So color is the information which will be associated with that object, and then fuel type, whether it is a petrol, diesel, whether it is CNG. So that is nothing but the information which will be associated with that object. Now this car is supposed to perform, isn't it? Otherwise this car is useless. What functions this car is supposed to perform? So here this car is supposed to start, this car is supposed to drive, and this car is supposed to stop. So these are nothing but the functions which will be associated with the car object. So that is nothing but a role that this object is supposed to perform. Now let's consider another object, bank or bank account specifically. Now in the case of bank account, what information that will be associated with the account? So we know that account number, then the name of account holder and the account type. So that will be the information which will be associated with the account. Now what will be the actions or functions that account has to perform? So in that account you have to deposit money, you have to withdraw money, and you have to transfer the money. So these are the possible actions this bank account is supposed to perform. So that's what we have enlisted over here in the methods. So now data encapsulation we will study over here again. In this case, the methods over here, eat, sleep, walk, cannot access the data of the object car because it is not supposed to be used. So encapsulation says that over here these methods will only access the data of that particular object. Now let's say suppose there are 10 different objects we have, like person 1, person 2, person 3. Then for the person 1, this entire thing will be associated. Means for the person 1, he will have the methods and attributes. For the person 2, he will again have the methods and attributes. Now for the person 1's methods can access the data of only person 1. Person 2 methods can access the data of only person 2. So this is how that will be associated. So that this is how encapsulation is achieved over here, and this is the beautiful feature of object-oriented programming. In this particular way, we are making the data not to access the inadvertently from the another methods. So another methods cannot access the data of each others without the permission. So let's say suppose this person is supposed to use the car. So this person cannot directly access the car, but a method of this person will communicate with the method of this car, and then through this method they can access the data of this car. Not directly they can access, but through this method they can access. But again in this method we can design certain safeguards so that to whom to allow the access. So if there is any random person who wants to access the car, company and all that, we will not allow them. But these methods will check whether this person is genuine or not, and then only they will allow to access the car. So in this particular way, in object-oriented programming, we communicate between different objects. Now we know what objects are. Now we have to understand how to create these objects. So in order to create these objects, we have a mechanism to that we called as a class. So class is nothing but a blueprint of an object. Now what exactly this blueprint means? Blueprint will actually indicate how the object will be constructed. Like when we are constructing a house, we don't directly construct a house, but instead of that we have a blueprint of an house, like how the house will look like, how the passages will be made up of, how the internal rooms will be created, what dimensions that it will have, what how the windows will look like. So all these things will come into the blueprint first, and once it will be there in the blueprint, then only a house will be directly constructed, isn't it? So similarly, as we wanted to create an object, we cannot straight away go and create an object. So first we will need to create a blueprint of an object, and for that we have a class. So class is nothing but the blueprint of an object. Also, it will describe how the object will look like. So it will describe the object, how the object will be created, that will be described over here. So in one sense we can call class is nothing but a collection of similar types of objects. So when we will collect all the similar types of objects, we can call them as a class, isn't it? And class, if we have to look at in a different way, is nothing but a mechanism which will put out how the object will look like, how the object will be created, and how it will be constructed. So let's try to understand this concept in a detail. Let's consider there is a object. I wanted to create car, isn't it? But car can be a generic, isn't it? Because when we will talk about the car, here you can see there are number of parameters which are very much generic, isn't it? By looking at this car, you cannot recognize about which particular car I am talking about, isn't it? It's a very generic car. So it has certain information which is associated with it. So for example, it has a company, it has a model number, it has a different color, manufacturing year, price and fuel type, and so on. So all that is nothing but the information that will be associated with the car. Of course, that will be different from car to car, isn't it? But that information has to be get associated with the car, otherwise I cannot uniquely identify car, isn't it? And this car is supposed to work also, isn't it? It should be a functional car. So what are the different functions that will be associated with this car? So we have the this car is supposed to start. Of course, without starting, this car is useless. It is supposed to drive. It is supposed to park. Then these are having certain functions like brake, lock, turn. So these are some of the functions that will be associated with the car. But this is very generic. What I am talking about this car is very generic. But when we have to create a particular instance which is actually drivable, which is actually functional, then I have to use a different object of this car. So as of now, what I have done, I have just created a mechanism through which car will be manufactured. And every time this car will be manufactured, this information which will be associated with it, and it will have certain functions associated with it. Now, let's say I wanted to create a Honda City. So I can use the same class, that is car, and I can create a Honda City, isn't it? Now in order to create a Honda City, it will get a different company name, model, then manufacturing year, then color, then gear type, and all this information that will be uniquely associated with this car. Also, how this car will function, that I will need to write down, isn't it? How it will drive, how it will brake, how it will take a turn, so how it will go reverse. So all that is nothing but the functions that will be associated with this car, Honda City. So I will need to write down all these details. Now let's say suppose I have done with the Honda City. Now I wanted to create another car. So I can create another car like Hyundai i20. I can create another car with this. Only I am using the class car, so the mechanism is same. Okay, the how I am creating this particular car is the mechanism is same. But every time there are certain different things which are getting associated with it. Now for this car, information is again different from this car, isn't it? So for the i20, company has been changed, model number has been changed, gear type has been changed, fuel type has been changed. The way how Hyundai i20 is working is entirely changed from the Honda City. So I will need to rewrite again how this car is supposed to function, isn't it? But again, the car which we have seen earlier was not functional. The class car, the one that we have seen in the earlier PPT, that was not functional. But I can work with this Honda City. I can work and I can use this Hyundai i20. So these are the functional cars. So in one sense you can understand this, when we have a class is not directly useful as long as you don't have the object of it. So when I had a car which was presented in the earlier PPT, it was like a generic one. We had only chassis, we had only generic features, but that car was non-functional. So when we wanted to make it functional, we have to put certain another attributes into it. We have to create some functions, we have to write down the detailed functions of it, and then only these cars can be useful. So now I have a Hyundai i20 which is functional car which I can use. Similarly, I have other cars also. So all these are nothing but the cars, isn't it? But again they are different from each other in terms of their informations, in terms of their functionality. But in one sense they all are drivable. They all are functional. I can drive through them. So that's why we can put all of them under one classification, that all these are nothing but the cars. Now let's say I wanted to create a truck. So for creating a truck, entire structure will be changed, isn't it? So again, for creating a truck, if I wanted to create a truck of Tata or Eicher or some for other company like a Mercedes-Benz or only Benz Bharat, in that case, first I will need to create a class truck, and that will be a very generic. That truck is not drivable. That truck is non-functional because it is very generic. But that truck or that class will define that how the truck will look like, what sorts of information which will be associated with the truck, and what are the different functions that that truck is supposed to perform. Whether that truck is like supposed to load the goods and transfer the stuff from one place to other place, or that truck is like supposed to pull something. So depending upon the functionality, that will be changed, isn't it? But that is a truck. And once I have the class truck, I can create as many trucks as I want depending upon my needs. So this is how you have to look at towards the objects and classes. I will need objects in real world, but in order to use them, in order to work with them, I have to first work with the classes. I will create a generic class. I will create a class through which these objects will be manufactured, and these objects will be later on used in our program. Now in the upcoming session we will study how to create class, and once we know how to create class, we can create as many objects as we want. So in the upcoming session our first focus will be on the creation of classes. Till then, keep studying. Thank you for watching it.